This is a Honda 300. It's a 1997 model. I bought this four-wheeler new about 22 years ago, and it's been a great four-wheeler. It runs great. It'll crank right up. I found a pretty major oil leak, and come to find out it's actually a pretty common leak. Some people call this a clutch cover. Clutch is here, but this whole cover here is one piece that comes off in one piece. But I had a leak. It was a very bad leak. It was blowing oil from the top of this crankcase cover right in this area right here. And it was blowing oil out, and it was actually hitting the exhaust and smoking a bit. So it's a major leak. I have to fix this. Again, this is a 1997 model, and I understand that after 1997, Honda actually designed this cover and put an extra bolt here in this area. So it must be a common issue with this four-wheeler leaking, this crankcase cover leaking in this area. So I ordered a new gasket from Babbitt's, and it just came in, so I'm going to put that on there. Some people use Honda Bond. I read that some people just go ahead and pull this off, scrape the gasket off, and then replace everything with Honda Bond, or use Honda Bond in place of the gasket. I'm not going to do that. A couple of things we need to be aware of through my research and in doing this job, pulling this cover off. You can't just remove all the peripherals and jerk the cover off. You can, but you're going to create more work for yourself. This Kickstarter shaft, if you're not careful, this shaft, and it's sealed by an oil ring there, if you go to pull this cover off, this shaft will come with it. And if you pull that Kickstarter shaft out, there's a gear in there and it's spring loaded. So if you pull that out, you'll have to reclock this gear set when you put it back in, which is not a big deal. But if you want to save yourself the extra work, you can actually get this cover off and leave the shaft in place. So we're going to try to do that. And then here behind this plate, there's what's called the reverse stopper. It's another shaft that kind of comes through just like this one. Has an O-ring, and then that reverse shaft will actually hang in that O-ring when you pull this cover off, and that reverse stopper shaft will pull out with it. And then there's a procedure. You'll have to reset that reverse stopper, before you put it back on. So we're going to try to save ourselves some extra work and leave that reverse shaft in place and this Kickstarter shaft in place. So I'm about to get started. To get started, I'm going to remove this Kickstarter from the shaft here. It's just one bolt. I'm going to remove the foot peg. I think that's 4 bolts under there. I'm going to remove this oil line from here. Probably go ahead and remove it from up here as well. Take it out so I can inspect it and make sure it's clear. Remove this plate, and then remove this cable assembly away from the plate. Maybe a couple other things, but I'll go ahead and get started, and then I will keep you guys updated along the way. Okay, so I have all of the peripherals off that I need to take off to be able to pull this cover. I have the Kickstarter off. That was easy. One bolt slides right off. I have the oil tube feed line. It's off. Very easy. And let's see, the foot peg is off. And there was a plate here that covers these sensing wires. And these sensing wires just pull off, but you want to make sure that they're kind of like a spark plug boot. Make sure that you wiggle them loose, break them free, moving them side to side. Once they break free, you can just pop them straight off. Be careful with them, but they come off fairly easy. And then the part of the shift linkage for this reverse stopper, got it off. And there was a bracket here, so I had to remove one of the crankcase bolts to go ahead and pull that bracket off for that cable, and then all of this is free. So a lot of people, what they'll do is just go ahead and remove all the bolts, and then they'll tap this shaft, this plate, this cover loose, and then pull it off. And when you do that, you'll have this gear set come with it. You'll have to reset all of that, and then if you pull this reverse stopper out and if it falls out, then you'll have to reinstall it, which is not a big deal. But if you want to save yourself some time, you can try to leave these shafts in place. I'm going to try that. So what I've done is loosened all of the crankcase bolts, and then they're loosened maybe about 1/8 of an inch. And what I want to do is break this cover loose, and I'm going to leave these bolts in place just loose so it doesn't just pop off. And to do that, you'll see you can break them loose. This cover has lobes, so you see this one lobe here at the end of my finger. It has a lobe here down on the front, and then you have another lobe right here. So I think these lobes are designed to be able to use a slide hammer and pull this cover off. And you can, if you don't have a slide hammer, you can get a long screwdriver through the back, through the other side, and tap it here, and then tap it here. You can get through to the other side. This one, however, you can't get to the other side. The motor's in the way, and you can't get anything through to the other side. So I'm going to use a slide hammer. I actually have one here, and we'll just get on one of the lobes. I'm not going to be able to do this one-handed, but just to show you, give you an idea. So I'm going to put the foam down and use the slide hammer, and then just bust the cover, break the cover loose, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so I have it broke free. Didn't take much. Just put the slide hammer on these lobes and tapped a few times, and it broke free. And I went ahead and took out all the bolts except for 3. I have one here, I have one here, and then one here. And they're loose. I only have them in there maybe about a couple threads a piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and start tapping again on these lobes, pulling it out all the way against the screws. At the same time, I'm going to be pushing in on these 2 shafts to try to keep them seated. So I'm just going to keep working it out, keep these shafts pushed in. Okay, I got it off, and it wasn't that hard. And that is what the inside looks like. The reverse shaft stayed in place, as well as the kickstarter stayed in place. I'm not going to adjust anything or remove anything in here. Let's see. Let's just look at where it was leaking. Right here is where it was leaking, and you can see that this gasket's kind of been sucked down in here inside the crankcase. So it looks like that's where it was leaking. Trying to get the gasket off. There's no easy way to do this. It's just slow and careful. You just got to have patience. You don't want to scar that metal. You don't want to cut any new grooves in that aluminum. So you just want to go very slow and just keep working your way through it. And I started over here and I worked my way across the top, just going very slow, and that gasket will come off. Again, a lot of patience. So I've got to go all the way around. Okay, I have the gasket cleaned off all the way around, and man, that took about an hour just on the engine side, and then about 20 minutes here on this cover side. But it's all clean, and I'm rethinking a gasket sealer. I was going to just put the gasket on, just the dry gasket. I think You know, the gasket itself should be fine by itself, as long as the surface is in good shape, and I think it is. But we know this area here where it's actually leaking, you know, Honda went back and added another bolt in here. And this is very thin through here. So, I don't know, a gasket sealer may help. I don't have any Honda bond, which a Honda bond is what you make a gasket with anyway. You can join the two, you know, join two pieces and without a gasket using Honda bond. But I have some Permatex Ultra Gray, and I'm going to use it. I think I'm going to put a very thin film of the Ultra Gray on each side, and then you know, that'll help hold the gasket, and maybe it'll help seal these corners a little better. One other thing I wanted to show you, while you're in here and have this cover off, at the bottom, if you have the same model, there's a oil screen here that is designed to catch any large particles, and that screen there needs to be clean. I cleaned mine. It was a little dirty, but it just slips right in there. There's a couple of grooves that it goes on, so make sure you take a look at that. Okay, I have a very thin layer of the Permatex Ultra Gray on there. And then a thin layer on this side as well. This stuff sets up pretty quick, so you have to work with it. You need to get it together pretty quick. So I'm going to take the gasket now and get it set. Okay, I have the gasket set. And that Permatex really helped out as far as holding the gasket in place. Everything looks to be in order. Okay, I'm gonna get the cover set in place. Hopefully that'll go pretty easy. Okay, cover is installed. It's actually the next morning. I ran out of daylight. Got everything torqued down, and it went on easy. The cover went over the Kickstarter gear easy, and then I had a little bit of trouble in this reverse area putting the cover back on. This rod, this reverse lever that actually seats right in here, I think I had a little trouble getting it seated. I just kind of kept moving the cover around until it's seated properly. Alright, so I'll get everything buttoned up, get the kick start lever back on, the oil feed tube, and these wires here for the sensors, foot peg, get it all buttoned up, and then I'll fill it up with oil. Okay, it's all buttoned up now. I have all the peripherals installed, and now I'm going to change the put a new oil filter in, and then put some fresh oil in, and then bring it up to operating temperature, and we'll see if it leaks. Well folks, she's all done, and I just had it running for a few minutes. I don't see any leaks, so hopefully that will be okay. Now I'll be looking for future leaks. Like I said earlier, I think this four-wheeler is 22 years old, and the engine's never been cracked other than what we just did on the crankcase cover. But everything else seems to be fine. This four-wheeler does all I need it to, so I will keep fixing it and keep it running. Until next time, folks. Thanks for watching.